Halls of Fame. Brought to you by Rolaids Antacid. Relief. You know how to spell it.
He's one of the greatest major league pitchers of this century. He earned the Cy Young Award 4 times, and although his career spanned 6 different teams, most people remember him as a Philadelphia Philly. Hello again, everyone. I'm Fran Healy, and welcome to the Halls of Fame. We'll be spending the next half hour with one of the craftiest lefties ever to throw off a mound, the legendary Steve Carlton.
I was raised sort of on the in North Miami, Florida, and it was on the sort of the Everglades back then before it's all condominiums now. So I was always good at throwing things. I could always, out hunting rabbits or birds, I was always throwing rocks and hitting these things. So I was very good with, the knives or the things that you play with when you're a kid, spears and things like that. So out in the Everglades, I always hit the game with the rock. It's one of those storybook kind of things, but I did. I could always knock a dove off a wire or, hit a rabbit with a rock or something. And it just seemed natural that, for me to move into baseball because I had such good control and, developing your arm because you're always throwing rocks and things like that in the, around the...
What about other sports growing up?
Yeah, well, anything throwing, unofficially, I had an offer to go in high school to sign a quarterback contract with one of the universities. It was it was once removed, but the guy never addressed me. But he told the coach, I'll give him. He could see me throw the football. I could throw it, 75 yards or whatever. So I'll give it. I was never officially like a quarterback, in high school or anything. So, but he said I had such a good arm. Said he would give me a tryout for one of the universities in Florida. I said no, I was too skinny because I was like 165, 170 pounds, 6'3", and wasn't interested in that. Track, I wasn't too good in track. I could jump a little bit. Played basketball, but baseball seemed to be my focus. And in my senior year in high school, I quit basketball and concentrated on baseball. So I knew that I didn't want to pursue the academic life, so I wanted to get into sports. So I took what I was best at and went with it and focused on it in my senior year and made it work. Yeah.
When did you, as a youngster, realize this throwing, I have an opportunity to be a professional athlete?
I don't think, it was probably in high school before I realized that there was like a career in it because we were, I had a paper route and when I was 12 years old and I wasn't too interested in playing, group sports. We played sandlot stuff, but I wasn't interested in doing it officially, like in my next door neighbors actually like physically drugged me down to the Little League field, and when I was 12 years old, I had a real good curveball and, just all those good pitches that, when you're young, but they drugged me down and back then when you were drafted, they'd stick you out and on the mound. There'd be 20 guys on the mound, and there'd be 20 guys over in first base. So you just stood on the position you wanted to play, and they just, choose you like the old Sandlot. I don't want him, And I ended up with the Lions Little League team back then, and we went to, I think we won our playoffs and everything. We had a good team, back then. And but I mean, my neighbors literally drugged me down to the field to get in, active, group sports like that, which I didn't want to do because I was independent. I had my paper out, I was going places.
Steve, you mentioned a curveball at 12 years old. How'd you develop that?
I don't really know. You work, back then we didn't have the like, there's so much coaching and teaching going on these days, that there's I think there's a lot of bad advice out there, but just piddling around with it, just experimenting in the backyard, throwing different pitches. I had a good knuckleball too. I wouldn't recommend that, but I don't know. It just developed. You try to do things with certain pitches, your hand ends up in a different position on a ball, and it makes it do certain things. And you stay with that. But I had a real good, I had kind of a big curveball for at that time.
Tell us about your high school career.
I was, throughout the 3 years I played in high school, I had a good record each year. I think, I don't know how many games we played back then, but I think it was like 8-2 or 10-2, something like that in my senior year. And we had a good ball club. We went to state a couple years. We didn't win, but there was a couple guys that signed off that professionally off our team. And I was headed for Miami-Dade Junior College then, and they were competing very well. They had a good baseball program there, and they played about 65 or 70 games, I recall. And I ended up signing. I was taking business administration. I didn't want to be in school, you know. So what I did is I had two offers, one from Pittsburgh and one from the St. Louis Cardinals. And the scout that tried me out, Chase Riddle, gave me a tryout with the Cardinals, and he liked what he saw. I was just throwing as hard as I could, you know. No, just showing him what I got. My arm was aching, you know. Back then, your arm always aches because you don't know how to train. Nobody really teaches you how to train, take care of it. And so let's see, it was September. Towards the end of the season, I guess it must have been middle to late September. I think it had to be late September because I think I saw Stan Musial's last career hit as a double, I think, off the screen in old Sportsman's Park there. And I went and tried out for the Cardinals at the big league level. You know, went down to the stadium in St. Louis there on Grand Avenue, and Howie Paulette was the pitching coach for the Cardinals at Johnny Keane, and you know that was in '63, and I threw really well. You know, Dave Ricketts was a catcher. You remember, still talks about that, catching me, you know. But just a skinny kid and just throwing hard as you could, you know, just to try to impress someone, to make an impression, to get out of your environment, you know, to get into what you want to do into baseball at the time is what I wanted to do. I really didn't know there was a major league level, you know. North Miami, there was a lot of football and horse racing. There wasn't a lot of, I don't recall ever talking about anything on the major league level. You see Mickey Mantle's name on a bat, but I mean, you didn't really put that into, you know, context or perspective.
Steve Carlton began his career with the St. Louis Cardinals. Then in 1972, he was traded to the last place Phillies. At the time, it may have seemed like a trip to nowhere, but Philadelphia was starting to turn things around, and Carlton was one of the keys to their newfound success.
71, I won 20 games for the Cardinals, and the next spring they traded me because I was having sort of a go-around with the Bush.
That was a wild holdout. Tell us about that.
In 70,
with Augie Bush.
That goes back 2 years prior to this. That would have been the spring of 70. In '69 I struck out 19 Mets. You know, the first guy to do it, and I had some pretty good stats. But before free agency, you know, you had to really become entrenched to try to get a couple $1,000s out of these guys. You know, so you know, I did a pretty good year, and Dal Maxwell was sort of my coach in this, you know, and it's his fault. We roomed together in spring training, and he said, you got to, you know, if you're going to negotiate here, you got, you know, just be polite and tell them what you want, and, you know, keep it down. Don't get excited about this. So Bing Devine and I were negotiating, and I wouldn't accept the offer, and it was, I forget what the numbers were, but it was like $2,500 or so at the time, and I wouldn't take Bing's offer. So Augie Bush got in it, you know. So we were in spring training at Al Lang Field, and the office there, and you know, just him and me in the room, and he was pounding his fist on the desk demanding that I take this money. I said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Bush. In good conscience, I can't take this. I feel that I did this and this. Here's my record. You know, it's tough talking yourself up and doing all this stuff, you know, and without an agent or someone. That came, you know, later, you know. So he was incensed. I wouldn't take the offer, you know. So Dick Myers ran the brewery. He was sort of the go-between. He got involved, and Mr. Bush got out of the. So Dick and I arrived at a 2-year contract deal, which back then they never did, you know. So, but I had the first year of the contract I had a poor year, and then the second year of the contract I won 20 games. So Augie Bush is looking at it like, well, over 2 years you're only this, but the Cardinals are always telling me you've never won 20 games, so you can't expect any bigger money. So when when I won 20 games, I said, well, here I am. I want some of this bigger money you've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 years. So then he was really angry because he was looking at the 2-year contract, and I was looking at the better of the 2 years, because what they had promised me 3 or 4 years back, you could never make any money unless you won 20 games. So I won the 20, and they traded me. They said, the opening day of spring training, said, get him out of here, and they traded me to Philly, tried to bury me. For Rick Wise and I were traded even up. We actually wanted the same money. I think it was like $65,000 at the time. And we were like, I was wanting 65, and the Cardinals were offering me 60. And Rick was wanting 65 for the Phillies, and they were offering about the same. So we were traded even up. But I know Augie had his hand in. He was trying to bury me with the last place ball club, which the Phillies were at the time. Cardinals were winning 85 to 95 games. They were first and second every, from the middle 60s on. They had a great ball club, and I was devastated.
Tell us about that.
Well, after I'd won 20 games, I was into this training of the mind aspect, so my next goal was to win 25 games with the Cardinals, So as soon as the season ended, I upped the ante, mentally, and I started off. So I had good 4 months invested in winning 25 games. This whole mental concept, yeah. So, I'm doing my weights, and I'm training between the seasons, getting ready for spring training. In '72 with the Cardinals, but I'm going, I'm going to win 25 games. I won 20. I've got to up the ante a little bit. So, opening day of spring training, Bing Devine calls me like 8:30 in the morning, wakes me up, because I wasn't going to go to spring training because I was unsigned. He says, so we traded you to Philadelphia for Rick Wise. I said, oh my God. I was just devastated. But then, now everybody bounces around from team to team. Back then, they traded you because you were lousy. That's the only reason he ever got traded. Rarely did they make a trade that was sort of uplifting, So I hung the phone up, and I told Bev, my wife, and I was just devastated. So I called Bing back. I said, can we do anything here? I'll take the I'll take the money. Anything. I said, I want to stay with the Cardinals. It's just the way it was back before free agency. And he said, no, it's already a done deal. So I called up Joe Horner. Joe was playing with the Phillies, and he was already in spring training because that was opening day. So I called him. I got a hold of him down in Florida in Clearwater, and told him what was going on. He said, well, I have to book a ticket to going down. I ended up in Clearwater that evening. And I had some friends there, Joe Horner, and Timmy was on the ball club at that time, and a couple other guys who got traded for Dick Allen back in '69 were still there. So, but I was devastated. But when I got to spring training, I was thinking about this thing for a whole week. So I've got invested. I've got 4 months invested in my goals. 25. I want to win 25 games this year. But now with the last place ball club, there's not winning but 60 games a year maybe, and as opposed to what a team is going to win 90. So your percentages are better with the Cardinals. And I was going. It took me a whole week to decide anyway. And I said, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to hold on to my goals. I'm not going to change the number. So I became very entrenched, very focused. It just consumed me, the whole idea. So in '72, I ended up winning 27 games with the last place ball club. And it was just incredible what the power of this focus and concentration in the mind, and this whole thing, how it drives this, the physical part. It was just an amazing test of your abilities, and it was just an awesome year. The team played great behind me. We were possessed. We were going to do it.
Steve, tell us what you remember about your career in Philadelphia. Say Philadelphia to Steve Carlton. What runs through your mind?
Well, we had when I went there in '72, we had a ball club that only won 59 games that year, and Paul Owens he was the general manager at the time. He ended up managing at the end of the season. Frank Lucchese was the manager all year until the end, and they fired him, and Paul Owens came down from the front office. But he was in charge of developing the minor league talent, and Mike Schmidt was in the minor leagues that year. He came up at the end of the year. Greg Lazinski came up, and So they had a lot of good talent in the minor league system. They had a very strong minor league system. We didn't have much of a pitching staff. I pitched every fourth day in '72 because we had 6 guys that could start, and they didn't really have so every time there was a day off or rain out, if it was the fourth day, they bumped the guy out. So I got 41 starts in '72. So it was great. I was pitching every fourth day the way I wanted to. But they didn't have much pitching, and they made some trades for some guys. Lombard came over in the early '70s from Boston, or wherever he was pitching. He might have been with Milwaukee at the time. But they started to build. They pulled in guys, Schmitty and Lazinski, out of the minor league system, and some other guys, and they made some key trades and got Dave Cash and second base, and they're starting to build, and they really had some focus and direction about winning. They're really interested in winning. So as the middle '70s came along, and in the later '70s, we were getting into postseason play. We're starting to become a really good ball club. A lot of talent, and they keep filling in and making the team stronger, making the bench stronger, and it was great to see it. And when I was with the Cardinals, it was different because I came into the middle of this great team, and they were just winning. But to start with a club that really needed a lot of help and watch them build from their minor league system and make some key trades, and in 1980, we went on, got postseason play, and won the World Series against Kansas City. So it was great to take it, and be with the team as it unfolded itself, from being a last place ball club all the way to winning world champion in 1980. It was exciting. I was happy for Rudy Carpenter and Paul Owens and guys that really put their time in with this ball club and not had a great deal of success, to see them, enjoy the fruits of their labor, as it were. It was nice to see an organization, turn around, and because I at the end of my career, I played with four other organizations, and a couple of them weren't really interested in winning. They had no direction, and so it's frustrating to see it. See that people aren't really trying. They're like their minor league teams for the rest of the league. They trade players here and there, and they never really. Cleveland was like that when I played for them. They weren't really trying to win. I don't know if they knew how to win at the time when I played for them in '80, '87.
For his achievements on the playing field, Steve Carlton is honored here at the Baseball Hall of Fame. Steve made the trip to Cooperstown in 1994, and he remembers that day as the crowning moment of his baseball career.
My philosophy is such that I can keep this in perspective, but it's the final, the crowning, thing in your career. It happens 5 years after you've retired, and it's that last big. It's the finale of it sums up your career. It's to be in that sort of elite class. And you really notice it when you have dinner after the awards ceremony, and everybody gets together, all the guys, and they have a little private dinner, and they have the ring presentation to the new inductees, and you look around the room and say these, and then you really realize what's going on, because there's the cream of the crop. They're such talented guys at that level, and sit there and joke with them and talk with them, have dinner. It really puts it in perspective. It's quite a tribute.
Many fans will remember Steve Carlton as a strikeout pitcher, which is hardly surprising since he struck out over 4,000 major league hitters. But those closest to the game remember Carlton for his ability to win. With 329 career wins and only 243 losses, Carlton knew how to get the job done. And though he seldom spoke to the media, his arm spoke volumes. For the Halls of Fame, I'm Frian Healy. So long, everybody.
Halls of Fame, brought to you by Rolaids Antacid. Relief. You know how to spell it.